I've said on here a bunch of times, or maybe a couple of times, I don't know, but I've said on here in different videos that getting offended is like a new sport. You know, who can get offended the fastest or the easiest about whatever. And older people like to blame younger people, right? As if we didn't raise them and say it's their fault and they're so sensitive. They need to get over it. And then these people over here, they're so sensitive and they get so offended and get triggered. We make fun of that, right? We make fun of people getting triggered and so forth. And we act like Christians I'm talking to act like that didn't happen to us. I'm Zach. This is The Average Christian. It's a project about what it means to have a relationship with God and how do I live that in practical everyday terms. And this one is about attitude. We will, though, look at those people who get triggered and make fun of them and drink out of coffee cups that Ben Shapiro sells that's called leftist tears and stuff like that, and act like some of us act like we don't get offended. Then you watch brethren, when you disagree with them, come unglued. And sadly to say, you don't have to wait long on social media to see brethren just lose their mind and get offensive and start tearing down and trying to destroy another person who disagrees with them. And so, and taking it personally, however you want to say it. Look, there's a lot of ways you could go about this and a lot of places you could go. I like Philippians 4 and verse 5 about let your reasonableness be known or your gentleness be known to everyone. The Lord is at hand. He says in verse 4, of course, to rejoice in the Lord. And again, I say rejoice. And then gives this statement, let your reasonableness be known. And I'll define this here in just a second, this calmness. And why? Because the Lord is at hand. Well, a lot of times people read that and they think, well, when it says the Lord is at hand, it means he's near. No, it means he's here. The Lord is here. That's one reason to be calm and collected and reasonable or gentle, however you want to define that or whatever word you want to use there, because he's here. He's nearby. So there's a comfort there. And there's also a sense of God is always around, not as a watchdog, but he's always, it's not like you and I are getting away with anything by acting a certain way or thinking certain things and God's not aware. But let's just, I digress from that. Let's get back to this word. So when you go and you look up this word for reasonableness, that's the English Standard Version. It says seemly in the Greek. It's seemly or suitable, equitable, fair, mild, gentle. Tell me the current talk hadn't gotten into my head. So those are the ways it's used. It's an adjective: seeming, suitable, equitable, fair, mild, gentle. And so let me read you some other verses wherein this is translated. And I want to use this, number one, to make ourselves aware that some of us do get offended and get offended very easily. I've told my children, and I try to practice this as well, the Bible does not say, God is not against anger at all. Otherwise, Jesus sinned in a couple of scenarios. But anger doesn't accomplish much in the way of godliness, and it makes it very difficult to be reasonable. It makes it very difficult to think properly, to act properly. But man, I just lost my train of thought. Where was I going with the anger thing? Let me see if I can recover this so I don't have to start all over. Where was I going? I was talking about anger, right? Oh yeah, okay. But in talking about anger, when we react like that and we start popping off and saying things out of reaction, I've told my kids, the first one to get angry in a discussion or disagreement is the one to lose, because generally that's the case. Usually it's the one who's run out of arguments or doesn't know what they're talking about, and so has now gotten personally offended or at least acting that way to try to back somebody else off. How you and I, in order to have discussions, in order to disagree, in order to have conversations, in order to try to teach people, there is going to be that disagreement. And if we're ever going to be effective, we're going to have to calm down this offensive or easily offended nature that some of us have. And we're going to have to stop looking at everybody else like it's an outside problem, which happens to church people at times, Christians at times. So again, I'm going off into tangents here, but hopefully you understand why this is important. So let's look at some other verses here that use this same word. 1 Timothy chapter 3, in fact, just four of them here. 1 Timothy chapter 3 and verse 3, not a drunkard, not violent, but gentle. Some of us are not necessarily violent physically, but we're violent with our words and with our reactions and so forth. And not violent, but gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money. What about Titus chapter 3 and verse 2? To speak evil of no one, to avoid quarreling, to be gentle, and to show perfect courtesy toward all people. Let me read that again, because it uses that in the context of what not to be as well as what to be. So to not speak evil of anyone. I need work there. You probably do too. To avoid quarreling. See, we say, well, that's not standing up. No, there's a way to stand up. Jesus could stand up but still be a peacemaker at the same time. Avoid quarreling, to be gentle, and to show perfect courtesy toward all people. In James 3 and verse 17, the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, open to reason. See how it fits in this framework here? Peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruits, impartial and sincere. Finally, 1 Peter chapter 2 and verse 18, servants, be subject to your masters with all respect, not only to the good and gentle, but also to the unjust. And so you see it used there and defined as gentle and reasonable. And I'm just trying to encourage me and you to not overreact, to not label everybody else as being triggered and then act the same way when somebody disagrees with what we're saying. Or if somebody is unreasonable and violent toward us, that last verse, servants, be subject to your masters with all respect, not only to the good and gentle, but also to the unjust. They may be unfair in what they're saying. They may be offensive in what they're saying, but I don't have to react like that. And I need to be reasonable, gentle, calm, and mild. I want to thank you for being with us today. If you're watching on YouTube and you have not already, you can subscribe by hitting this button. Keep up with all future releases. And speaking of releases, over here, one is what YouTube recommends. The other is our latest release. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. It helps get the word out. For our podcast listeners, we're grateful for you. We ask that you subscribe, rate, and review as well, again, to get the word out. And the reason to get the word out is to hopefully help more people. And so everybody, please consider sharing this with someone else.